Next, let's look in your Advanced Methods book to page 33. The goal of this piece is to show how lyrically you can play and how good of a tone you can produce. So first, let's look at the key. You'll see that there's only one sharp, so we might assume that we're in G major, but in this case, we are playing in E minor. So we're only going to be playing the top 3 lines of this piece. The top line is going to be in E minor, and towards the middle of the second line is going to switch to G major, and then on the third line, we'll go back to E minor again. Next, let's look at the time signature. We are in 9/8, meaning that there are 9 eighth notes per bar, or 3 dotted quarter notes per bar. Next, let's look at the tempo. You'll see that there's andante written at the top. This means an easy walking pace, which is 60 beats per minute, or dotted quarter note equals 60 beats per minute. So an important thing to do for this piece whenever you're about to play it is make sure that you're really relaxed, you don't have excess tension, and also to connect everything together. You really want to bring out the crescendos and decrescendos. So let's look at measure 1. You'll see that there's piano written, and then immediately following that there's a crescendo and decrescendo. So let's work through this. So we really want to bring these out. So here's from the beginning. Again, 1, 2, 3. So you'll see that I started out piano. I did the crescendo and the decrescendo. The next measure, same thing. I went back to piano, crescendo, decrescendo, and then I played the rest of it. And then at the very end, I made sure I still had enough volume that I could decrescendo. And the challenging thing at the end of this line is whenever you decrescendo and you hit that low E is going to have a little bit harder of a time to respond. So you might need to play on measure 3 more of a mezzo piano so that whenever you get to measure 4, where that decrescendo's at, you'll still have enough air to be able to decrescendo to get it a little softer. Whenever you're playing through this, it would be great to work with a metronome just to really help out with the counting. And at the very beginning, you'll see that there's a dotted quarter note attached to an eighth note. The counting might be a little bit tricky here, so what you can do at the very beginning is get rid of that tie, the tie from the B to the next B of the beat 2 of measure 1, and actually tongue it instead temporarily, just so you can get used to the rhythm. So let's play through that. So here's measure 1, and here we go. So I went ahead and tongued everything for now, just so we get used to the counting. So here we go, measure 1 again. 1, ready, go. Now I'm gonna slow everything else except for the 2 Bs. Here we go, ready, go. Now if you're still having trouble playing this, go ahead and tongue the triplet pattern in the dotted quarter note from the very first note. So I'll give you an example of that. It goes something like this. So 1, 2, 3, 1, or triple it 2, triple it 2. Then what you can do next is get rid of the triplet on the dotted quarter note and then tongue the B of the second measure. So that'll sound again like this. And then the last thing that you would want to do is to put in the full tie and the slurs, so no tonguing. So here we go, 1, 2, 3. Again, I'll encourage you to play with a metronome here. And you could turn on your triplet function on your metronome, which might help. There's the triplet right there. 1, 2, 3. So if that is a little fast, go ahead and turn your metronome down a little bit slower, maybe about 50 or 45, and then work on speeding it up as you go along. So that's going to be one of the main things of this piece, is to be able to bring out those crescendos and decrescendos. And whenever you get to measure 3, make sure that everything is very connected. You have a steady stream of air until you get to measure 4, where you have that decrescendo, and you're going to bring down that volume of the sound. And you're going to do that for every single line, and then you're going to end on the 3rd line at the end of it. So I'm going to play it from the beginning and just a little bit slower, and you can play along too. So this is at 50 beats per minute. So 1, 2, 3, soft. So if you look, there's going to be a couple spots where they're going to try to 3 off just a little bit because they add a tongued note instead of slurs. So to point this out, if you look at the very last 2 notes of the top line, you'll see that the G and the A are slurred. Now if you go directly below that, the 2nd line, you'll see that the G and the A are this time tongued instead. And another place where they add a tongue note that is normally slurred is on the 3rd line, measure 9. And it's the very last note of measure 9. So that's an E. And you'll see now that instead of it being slurred, they now want you to tongue it. And the last place to point out for the slurs and the tongues is measure 12, or the 3rd line, 4th measure. Whenever they go to that low E, this time that low E is slurred and not tongued. Where the music tries to throw you off between the slurs and the tongue, you can make sure that you can write a T above those spots, and it can help remind you. I'll show you what I've done here. So you can see right here, I've added TT to help remind me to tongue those 2 notes. And then right over here too, I've added a tongue right there. And this is that last spot where they have a slur instead. So, all right, that's it. Thank you.